Hello, this is Kim Ades from Frame of Mind Coaching, and you are joining us at the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast. It is my absolute delight and pleasure to introduce to you my co-host today. She's a friend of mine, she's a client of mine, and she's someone that I respect and have respected for a very, very long time. Her name is Milisa Burns, and she too owns a coaching company, and so I'm excited to be talking to her and all of you about some interesting coaching ideas. Milisa, welcome.
Thank you, Kim. I'm so happy to be here with you.
So, Milisa, you run a coaching company, but your focus is on women mostly, right? Is that right?
That's right.
And you have a set of programs that are focused on this whole idea of making room for you.
Exactly. That's
What
my
does that
tagline.
mean? What does that even mean?
That means that I help women make room for themselves to be at their most empowered, so they can go out into the world and contribute to their fullest, while also doing it in a way that feeds them, that nurtures them.
So that's very interesting. And I want to kind of dig into this subject. But before we do, I just want you to share with people your history. You used to be, or maybe you still are, I don't know, a lawyer?
I don't practice law anymore. I think once trained as a lawyer, there's always that part of your identity that's there, and certainly that's the case for me. So I practiced law for 6 years, downtown in private practice, and then as in-house counsel. And then went through a period when I was a stay-at-home mother, and then reinvented myself as the coach about 14 years ago.
Okay, so let's jump in, and I want to know what exactly about women makes it hard for them to make room for themselves. Like, why is that even an issue? Like, would we have a Make Room for You program for men?
Well, I'm sure men do have some of the same issues, and I think there's value in focusing on women. One of the things that I think is really true about women is that we don't see how powerful we are. We need other people to reflect that back to us, whether they're coaches or friends or colleagues or other women in a women's circle, like the ones that I run. And the reason partly that we don't see our own value is that there are parts of us, things that come so easily to us, that we haven't necessarily been valued in the most recent few hundred years of society. Like, for example, kindness, and men can be kind too, definitely. And it hasn't been considered something that's valuable, for example, in the corporate world or the legal world.
Right.
As much as, being a strategic thinker and being decisive, being the kind of patriarchal leader with all those qualities. So as women, we need to be reminded that just because something comes easily to us does not make it not valuable. In fact, that's where we should be paying attention to how we can show up as ourselves at our most powerful, always growing and addressing challenges that we have.
So if the corporate world doesn't value, and I'll just take kindness as your example, right? If the corporate world doesn't value kindness, right? So, and we kind of say, hey, wake up, kindness is super important. Are we also changing kind of the face of the corporate world? Like, how are we influencing the corporate world? Like, how are we making that impact? Are we doing it kind of by allowing women to say, hey, this is important, and I go back to my corporate position and say, this is important? Like, how does that happen? How does that change?
Yeah, one action at a time, one meeting at a time, one mentoring conversation at a time, hopefully multiplied over and over and over again around the world.
Right. So I do a lot of work with executives, and a lot of times they come to me with parenting issues. And it's strange because initially they come to me to become better leaders, to become more effective in their work environment, to become more effective as entrepreneurs, and to increase their revenues and profit margins and all that stuff. but inevitably they talk about their relationships, and one of the most important relationships is the one with their kids. And I find that when I can make a positive impact for one entrepreneur, one leader, one executive in their relationship with their kids, my feeling is like there's a ripple effect. So it may be one entrepreneur or leader at a time, but at the end of the day, there's a trickle down effect that's pretty massive.
I hear you. Yes.
And it sounds like that's what you're saying too.
Yes.
So
exactly.
And yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I read an article this morning, about how women tend to say I'm sorry quite a bit. Do you find that?
Yes. Yes, I do.
What's up with that? Where does that come from? What are we sorry about?
I think, it's funny. I think sometimes it's that we're almost sorry to be taking up too much space.
Wow.
Because we feel like if we're taking up space, this is why making room for you it resonates so strongly with me. If we're taking up space, we have this misunderstanding, this false assumption that if we take up space, that means there's less space for others.
Right.
Kind of like that Marianne Williamson quote, where it's not our weaknesses that we fear, but our power, because we feel like if we're taking up a lot of space, then that diminishes other people. When in fact the opposite is true, that when we take up space from the place of love and caring and kindness and all those positive attributes that we can draw on, men or women,
right,
that actually gives permission to others to also show up, at their best, and it's a catalyst for something super positive wherever they are.
So one of the things you said before was this whole idea of women's circles, women gathering together. So what happens in these circles? What do you do? What do you talk about? Like, is it like a kumbaya kind of thing? I know I'm right? Like, what is it like?
Well, I run different kinds of circles. I'll speak to the Feminine Power branded circles that I run every month. And they are it's very proactive. It's very galvanizing. It's not kumbaya so much as creating, like, I'm sure there's kumbaya in it, but it's creating a space, like what I'm trying to do now because of the brilliant work of Claire Zammit, my mentor, who founded Feminine Power.
Yeah.
Who's affected hundreds of thousands of women now around the world with her work. She's trained me and others like me, hundreds of others, as facilitators and coaches and leaders around the world, to be able to create a very special container, like a space. Like, I make room for this special container, the space for women to be in, where I invite them into it to commit to showing up in a certain way.
What way?
So the way is to be focusing, rather than trying to think about caregiving or advising other women in the circle, which we've been valued for as women, as caregivers. That's one of the huge things we've been valued for. And it's beautiful. And I love being a caregiver. And when we're in the business of making room for us, in the business of growing into ourselves, we need to focus on ourselves. And so if we're busy thinking about how we could help another woman in the circle fix whatever it is, then we're taking our attention off of ourselves.
Okay.
And so it's quite challenging. And I'm still on the journey of coming back here first to myself in those transformational settings. But that's a huge piece of it, because when we show up and we're listening to other women and seeing what they can teach us about ourselves, what they're sharing,
right,
that's a whole different thing from listening to see how we can help them.
So I just want to understand this a little bit better.
Yeah, sure.
Okay? So
I love your question.
I'm in a circle,
Yeah.
and I need to focus on me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I need to listen to somebody else.
Yes.
But the reason I'm listening to someone else is because I want to know whatever comes out of that person, how it affects or relates to me. Is that accurate?
That's one part. Yes. So that's one of the commitments, to be noticing how it affects you.
Okay. What else?
Okay. And then what else is to be listening for and authentically sharing if there's something that your job is to listen for them and see them in their greatness, like in their power and their vulnerability. So we talk about something called empowered vulnerability. So the job is for that first commitment I just described, keep your first attention on yourself. The second one is to show up, not perfectly, absolutely not perfectly, there isn't such a thing, showing up at our best with our strengths and our vulnerabilities. So our job is to show up kind of with that empowered vulnerability, being aware of where we're strong and being aware of where we're challenged, and just being okay to be that and showing up like that. Okay. So it's kind of it's a strong stand.
Okay.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes. So I what I'm trying to find for myself is if I'm in the circle and I'm talking and everyone is focused on themselves.
Yeah. No, there's another part.
Where's okay, give me the other part.
Yeah. So the other part is I wanted to tell you those two parts about kind of that those internal pieces. Then when you're listening to another woman share, you're listening for how she's showing up in that kind of empowered vulnerability. Okay. And being inspired by that, and also listening for her, what's powerful about her, and reflecting that back, holding up that mirror, like I was saying, because we don't see our own power as easily as others see it for us.
So give me an example of what that sounds like.
So it could be, I'm listening to a woman and I hear how she's dealt with a really challenging thing in her life, and I hear how creative she was with how she showed up with that. Right. So it's like an acknowledgement that we would give in coaching, how she's being, right, in order to do what she did. So saying to her, oh my gosh, that's so creative. You know, I'm so inspired by that. And then as I'm saying and noticing her creativity, that might be sparking something in me about how I could be creative in my challenge.
So what you're saying is you're seeing in the other person what they may not see for themselves.
Yes.
And you're also saying, in my words, that you're also training them inadvertently to develop some coaching skills.
Training them to develop some coaching skills for themselves, you mean?
Yeah, because as a coach, for me, right, my job is to see the greatness in you. Yeah. My job is to see your infinite potential. Yeah, that's right. My job is to see beyond this very moment. My job is to see in the future and not get rattled by your current state, which may be discombobulated or thrashing about. And really, that's what you're saying. You're training these people in this circle to do that very thing.
You're right. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So a lot of people ask me, because we coach many people, they say, do you ever get kind of emotionally attached? Do you ever get thrown off? Do you ever get lose sleep at night over your clients? And I've coached a lot of people in the span of my career. And by and large, the answer is no. Sometimes, but by and large, the answer is no. Because when I am coaching someone, my vision is on their success, on their well-being, on their thriving. And even though in this very moment, that is not what's happening, that doesn't rattle me, that doesn't distract me, that doesn't bother me, because my vision is so clearly planted in that other place. Yeah. Right. So for that reason, I don't get emotionally distraught with my clients when they are emotionally distraught. Yeah. So, and in a way, that's exactly what you're teaching these people in the circle.
Yeah, because really they're going to a different place in themselves to be relating to that other person.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah.
This brings up the topic of empathy. One of my favorite topics, because
Love it.
it's a topic that's highly controversial in my circle, because I have a very specific point of view around empathy, which isn't the traditional viewpoint. A lot of people believe, like, in order to be a very effective coach, you need to empathize. And my philosophy is that empathy in coaching is actually pretty detrimental. And so they say, well, what do you mean? Like, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? And I say, well, let's really define empathy. Empathy is putting yourself in the shoes of another person and feeling, it's an emotional experience, feeling their emotional state. But if they are really suffering, then for me to feel that suffering disables me from being able to help them. I need to kind of see their suffering, acknowledge it, and have a strong view to their success and well-being. And if I am empathizing with them, I can't have that strong view. So I need to have compassion.
Yeah.
Care,
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But empathy can trip me up in a coaching situation.
I love this conversation. Can I give you my take on it?
Yes.
It's very similar, but slightly different. So, because I've been fascinated by the use of the words empathy and compassion, and they're interchangeably used. And for a long time, I've been confused, but I've been kind of studying it.
Yeah.
And what I fairly recently heard that made me really like understand it at a different level was that we need to pass through empathy on the route to compassion. So we need to feel with, but we don't stay there, because while we all need to be felt with and to be seen, it's incredibly powerful as a human being. We need to feel that from another person. That is not what's helpful as a coach, for example, to stay there, or a doctor, for example. You don't want your surgeon to be staying in empathy with you. You want them to be a human being and feel you, but then you want them to do the job, right? So they have to move into compassion. And then compassion is a very active state. And it's not necessarily just being nice. It's like what you're saying. It can be holding somebody to their future self and that vision where they can be going. So that's what I heard from a woman named Leah Weiss, who teaches at Stanford. She teaches at the business school, but she's got a social work and Buddhist training background. She's got a beautiful book about it.
So that's very interesting, right? Because as I hear that, I think, can someone actually move through empathy if someone's in a really dark hole? I don't think so, because if they're in that dark hole with the other person, how do they get out? If the other person can't get out, how do they get out? Then are they actually in a state of empathy? No, they're not. Right? So it's a bit of a tricky thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's possible. I feel like I've been doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is one of those areas of controversy for me.
It's fun to talk about them with you.
It's very fun to talk about it. So I want to move into another conversation. You are involved in an organization called, what is it called?
SheEO.
SheEO. Okay, what is that? I know that you're a very strong supporter of this organization. You're out there kind of holding the banners in the streets. What is this about? And it's funny because I just heard it again yesterday, and I'm like, what is going on here? What is this about? I need to pay attention. So please share with everybody. Question. What is this about?
Because today is actually November 1st is the day that is a deadline for putting money in the pot, which I'll explain in a minute, for this year, supporting this year's companies. So that's why you've been hearing a lot about it. But you can always join in any time of year. It's just, there's a bit of a deadline for this year. So what it is it's an organization that was founded by a fellow Torontonian named Vicki Saunders, who describes herself as a serial entrepreneur, and came up against the fact that venture capital goes to some minuscule proportion goes to women-led ventures. It's something like 2 or 3%. Okay, minuscule. And she, in her own venture, came up against that. And so she decided one day that she was going to change the way that women-led ventures were funded. And that's what she's done. And it's catching on like wildfire. And it's such a beautiful, brilliant model. And the reason I'm such a proponent, and I'll explain in more detail, but it's because the ventures that are being supported with the SheEO model are women-led ventures, and they all have to be, quote, working on the world's to-do list.
Oh.
The world's to-do list, meaning they're working on the Sustainable Development Goals as set out by the United Nations.
Okay, so give me an example of the world's
so
to-do list.
Things like gender equality,
yeah,
is an example, or cleaning up the oceans is another example. So things like that. And so the way it works is a group, 500, quote, radically generous women,
yeah,
that's the term they use, give, not invest, give $1,000 plus $100 of men in a year. So then you have $500,000 in a pot. And then you get women ventures companies applying for the no interest loans from that money. Okay. And the women, those radically generous women who are called activators, of which I am one, vote on who is going to get those loans. Okay, so they ultimately pick 5 ventures.
Okay, and are these companies Canadian, or is this an international organization?
So great question. So for those 500, that's in Canada.
Okay.
But now it's in the US, it's in Australia, it's in New Zealand, and now it's in the UK.
Wow.
So each one has 500, and I've lost count of how many. I think it's like 43 ventures have now been funded by SheEO since it started 5 years ago. And the track record for loan repayment is, I think, practically exactly like everybody's paid back their loans right on time.
Wow.
And the growth of these companies has been like astronomical. I don't have all the numbers at the tip of my tongue, but it's this incredible, brilliant model based on women's generosity.
Very interesting. And where might someone find a list of, what did you say, the EO, the what is it, agenda?
The Sustainable Development Goals, you mean? Is
it sustainable development, or you said there's an agenda that, or a list of things we're working on?
Yeah, the world's to-do list. That's
to-do list.
If you Google Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations, you'll get it. Yeah.
And are they all environmentally oriented, or are they perhaps, as the world moves forward, more and more people are lonely? So is connectivity on the world's to-do list, or not at all?
That's a good question. I can't remember, to be honest, but certainly ideas around well-being and there are, if you look at it, it's a social list. It's not just environment.
Okay, so
it's
the world's to-do list.
Very holistic list. Yeah, and I wish I had it at the tip of my tongue so I could share more, but it's there.
So for whoever's listening and you're thinking, man, that's interesting, I wonder if I could benefit from something like that, look up the world's to-do list.
Look up Sustainable Development Goals, or look up, because I'm not sure if world to-do list is the way to Google it, but Sustainable Development Goals.
Sustainable Development Goals, to see if you might qualify with your idea. So it's very interesting. I love the fact that the women are coming together. I love the fact that everybody's contributing a little bit to make a big difference. I love the fact that it's an interest-free loan. I think that's pretty radical in and of itself. And as a donor, as a supporter of this, so this is just a contribution you make, and that's it. And you're there to watch your contribution grow.
Yeah. Well, there's more, Kim. There's more. And I didn't realize it at the time when I first activated and paid the money, but it's coming into a network of women. So there's an online platform where all the activators and all the ventures from around the world are.
Right.
And we support each other.
Oh.
Right? And so the ventures might say, listen, we need somebody who has a contact at XY Corporation because we're trying to market our stuff. Does anybody know anybody? Right?
Oh,
And then you get, yes, email me, I'll set you up. Or so it's a network, an incredibly supportive network based on generosity. And then as an activator, I also have access to that network if I need something,
right.
right?
That's good.
But I feel like I'm connected to something much larger than I am, that is very hopeful about saving the world,
And is it
and
only women who
humanity.
are contributing? Can men contribute too?
It's only women, but I'm sure men, they can be supportive of women contributing. And so many cool stories, like a group of high school girls got together in a club and they pooled their money and got one vote.
Wow. Great. Great. So this
you
is
know
very interesting. So for people who are interested in perhaps tapping into this fund, see if your ideas line up. And on the flip side, if you think that you want to be a contributor, look into this organization, because
yeah
it sounds like it's a very interesting organization, not only that makes a difference, but also provides you with a very valuable, supportive network that could help you achieve your own goals.
yeah yeah
Yeah,
And there's a beautiful summit happening. They do a summit every year. There's a 2-day summit
yeah,
here in Toronto, a global summit,
okay,
in March around International Women's Day. And you get to go and participate in that, and get support and feedback and some workshops. So it's incredible. And it's if you look up SHEEO, SHEEO, like CEO, but SHEEO.
Oh, okay, got it, got it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
SHEEO world, I believe it is, .com, something like that. But Google SHEEO
Okay,
world and they'll find it. They'll find the
amazing.
website. And I'll just plug the podcast. There's a free
Okay,
podcast that's incredibly inspiring that they can find
okay,
at that website as well to learn about the ventures.
CEO.com.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, I find it incredibly inspiring to listen to the entrepreneurial stories. And then as a developing leader, I listen to Vicky, who's this incredible leader for this organization. And she's so transparent and so fierce,
Right.
and so honest and loving and playful and fun all at the same time. She's amazing.
So she's someone that we need to meet.
Definitely.
Okay, so I personally will take a look at this organization to see if there's a place for me to contribute and to learn from. I think it's
I would
super
love to have you
interesting.
there.
And Milisa, you have the last word. For women who are struggling to make room for themselves, what is your greatest piece of advice?
To understand that it's in the small steps. I love the phrase small but mighty, but we tend to be kind of all or nothing, and our thinking comes from being kind of perfectionistic. And so we think if we don't get that hour workout, we do nothing, right?
Right.
But it's not. It's in those deep breaths that we can always take, even when we feel like we don't have enough time or enough support. We can always give ourselves a few deep breaths. We have plenty of that, so these small but mighty things we can do. And I think if we spend some time, even just 2 or 3 minutes as early in the day as possible, to remember that and to have that journaling time, like we share a love of journaling, you and I.
Yes.
That's how we connected. Or just drinking a cup of tea or coffee, or having a few stretches, listening to some music, whatever it is that they enjoy. But even in these small but mighty steps, it's just so powerful as a way to proceed. And the ripple effects, like we talked about earlier, are big.
So small, mighty steps. That's the goal. Just do one little tiny thing for yourself today. Milisa, it was great having you on. How do people find you if they're looking for you?
Thank you, Kim. At my website, it's the easiest place, milisaburns.com, MILISABURNS.com.
Amazing. So please go look up Milisa. She's a special person. You can feel it She emanates this warmth, this kindness, this compassion. I don't want to say empathy. She emanates all the good stuff. And it's hard not to feel good in her presence. So go look her up. And Milisa, again, thank you so much for this time. And yeah, we definitely have to meet up again in person.
I so look forward to that, Kim. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight and I'm very grateful.